Hello everyone, and today we're going to talk about the importance of the center. So, first of all, what is the center? Well, there are two main things. So here, that's the small center, so d4, d5, e4 and e5. And there is also what's called as the large center or the big center, and that's basically all the squares around it. So why is it so important? Well, from the center, uh, many pieces can obtain maximum activity. So you see this knight here, once we develop it, it can suddenly move to all of these squares. And in fact is attacking our pawn at the moment. What's also interesting to note is that pawns and pieces can restrict the opponent's pieces from possibly interesting squares. So like here the knight can't jump to d5 since, well, we can take it with e takes e5. And the pawns in the center also make room for your own pieces to develop. So once we have moved this e4 pawn, now our bishop can come out to all of these squares. So let's say d4. We're going to ignore the fact that black can take this for a moment. So you see here these pawns are controlling all of these central squares. And let's say after knight c6, black can't move these knights to d5 or e5 since our pawns are controlling it. We are also able to develop our bishop, and by moving the d4 pawn also we made room for this bishop to develop now or later. So your pawns can also support your pieces. Let's say e6, knight f3. Now we are able, if we want to play knight e5, since this pawn supports the piece on e5. Mind you, right now black can just take it, but my point is, without this pawn, we wouldn't have the option to take back. So one point of putting pawns in the center is also so that they can support your own pieces. What's also interesting is that it can also be a preparation to take even more space at the right time. So always take care to develop your pieces, but if a good time arrives, let's say here, then it might be a good idea to take some space. And we are also chasing away this knight. And let's say the knight moves here, then right now it's trapped because we have so much central control as well. And well, the knight is just short of squares. I also noticed that with this strong center, protected by the knight, protected by the queen, black also can't take this pawn or this pawn. So let's say instead knight b6. So here is an example where we can take even more space, so we'll win a tempo on the knight. And let's say the continuation is something like this. Here we take even more space, and the bishop has to move. And the point of this pawn here is that it blocks the entire queen side, which will make it really hard for black to develop his bishop and his rook here. So let's say something like this. And now we control the central square here with our pawn. Also the knight can jump here. and these pawns are stuck, which means that black has a lot of trouble completing his development. So you see here that's already plus 3.1 advantage for white. So what does this actually mean for openings? Well, let's take a look at a couple of openings. Let's take a look first at the Scotch opening, e4, e5. So we take control over these squares here. Black does the same for these squares. With knight f3, we develop our knight and attack this central pawn. White develops this knight and at the same time defends this central pawn. And with d4, we are freeing some squares for our pieces. And we're also attacking this pawn one time extra. And here a mistake many people make is to take, and after knight takes to go knight takes d4. And why is that a mistake? Well, it's a mistake since this queen is extremely active on this square, and right now there is no natural piece to chase the queen away. There is no piece there is no knight that can come to c6 to exchange it, since black already traded it. So this is really good position for white, and in fact I think, yeah, the computer says even the best move here is queen f6 to attack the queen and get it away from this nice square. Now let's go back and let's take another popular opening, the Ruy Lopez. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. What does this do? Well, we attack the knight, and after we take it out, we take out the defender of e5. So we develop, and we develop with a threat. So knight takes e5 is threatened, but well, not really, since after takes and knight takes e5, black has the counter attack queen d4. Again, an example where the queen is very active in the center, and here in fact this is a very good position for black. Okay, let's take a look at the French now. So what's this all about, the move e6? Well, it's controlling these squares, but more importantly, black is preparing to play d5. So he is supporting the d5 push with this e6 move first, and after d4, where we again control these squares. Black pushes d5, and here white has a right choice to go e5, to exchange it, to go knight c3, a lot of different stuff, knight d2 also, the tirage. So that's not really the point. The point is black is supporting this central push, is preparing it with e6, and we have something similar with the Caro-Kann c6, preparing the d5 push. And here white also has a wide range of choices to push the pawn forward, to take it or do something else. Finally, let's also take a look at a d4 opening. So d4 controlling these squares, d5, so black controls these squares, bishop f4, so developing the bishop, and so this is the London system. And here it's really usually it's all about the e5 square, and for black usually or often it's also about the e4 square. So knight f6, defending this pawn and putting some control over e4, e3, e6, knight f3. I'm not saying these are the best moves, but this is how a game could go. So bishop e7, and in fact these moves are a little bit passive for black, but I want to illustrate the point that here this pawn supports a piece on f5. So after, let's say, h5, white can again put the knight on e5, and it's supported by the pawn on f6. And what often happens, let's say, going to make some silly moves. So here white can often also play this f4 here to support, to create some extra support for this knight, so that after takes, let's see, so that after this the knight gets chased away and white will get this open f-file. And you see here that this is very good for white. He has a lot of space. His pieces can come into the king side quite quickly. And also here the center is controlled, so this is called what's called a strong point, and it's taking away a lot of space for the black pieces. For example, obviously the bishop can't come to d6, the knight, which naturally defends this h7 square, can't come to f6. So one idea might be, although that can also be weakening, one idea for black might be to play f6 and undermine this e5 pawn. But of course, this in the process, this might weaken some squares for himself. But the point here is that we had a knight on e5, but now I have a pawn on e5. So a strong center, as you can see, which also controls some important squares. And in many openings, you will see that a lot of the fight, especially in the early stages, is about the center, controlling the center, attacking the center, undermining the center. As for undermining the center, I think there's no better example than the French defense, d4, d5, e5. Again, like you saw in the previous video in the London, we have a strong point here, and we control some squares. But what black now does is immediately challenge the center, and he's going to use all the pawns and pieces he can find to attack our center and to try to make it crumble. So let's say here knight c3, knight c6, so putting more pressure. Knight f3, we're defending it, and queen b6. And you see this French defense is all about black trying to undermine and get rid of our center, to weaken it, while white tries to keep it together or to get activity and a counterattack in some other ways. So this was a quick explanation of the importance of the center. I hope you found it useful. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, or leave a comment, and I will see you perhaps in one of the next videos.